Officer Brendan Walsh towered over the seated black woman, his voice exploding through the marble lobby of City Hall. He kicked her briefcase, scattering official documents across the floor as onlookers raised their phones. When she calmly reached to gather them, he grabbed her wrist and yanked her up, already reaching for his cuffs. What Walsh didn't know was devastatingly simple: the woman he was humiliating was the sitting governor of Oregon. How does a cop go this far, this fast? Stay with us. 20 minutes before the confrontation that would dominate national headlines, Dr. Naomi Pierce walked through the tall glass doors of Riverside City Hall exactly as she intended, alone, unannounced, and deliberately ordinary. No security motorcade. No staff trailing behind her. No press alerted to her visit. Just a black woman in a navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase, arriving 15 minutes early for an 11:30 meeting that nobody in the lobby seemed aware of. For most governors, this would be unthinkable. For Naomi, it was necessary. Because today wasn't just another meeting. It was a test. A test she had been running quietly since the day she took office 6 months earlier. Riverside had earned her attention the hard way: 17 excessive force complaints in a single year, all dismissed without meaningful review. The names changed, the stories did not. Black residents pulled from cars for furtive movement. Latino teenagers searched for matching descriptions. Elderly homeowners questioned for loitering. Naomi had read every complaint file on the flight in. The pattern was unmistakable. And it was exactly the kind of community she feared her new accountability laws weren't reaching. So she walked in the same way she once walked into bank lobbies as a 20-year-old graduate student, calm on the outside, fully aware of the eyes tracking her on the inside. That was the part of her life people no longer saw. Before the title. Before the staff. Before the portrait on government walls. She remembered being followed by store clerks who pretended to straighten shelves right behind her. She remembered the bank teller who asked for 2 forms of ID while the white man ahead of her deposited a larger check without question. She remembered a police officer asking why she was walking through her own neighborhood and whether she belonged there. A governor's title changes protocol but not memory. And memory was why she insisted on doing these surprise inspections without her detail. If her laws meant anything, then any black woman sitting alone in a public building should be treated with basic dignity: no badge, no title, no announcement needed. Her presence here wasn't to test power, it was to test culture. A culture that too often saw blackness as suspicious before a single word was spoken. She took a seat on the wooden bench near the security desk, opened her tablet, and began reviewing architectural plans for the municipal renovation she'd helped secure as a legislator. The lobby buzzed faintly, a mother filling out permit forms, 2 attorneys whispering near the elevator, an elderly man smoothing out his property tax documents. It was an ordinary Tuesday in an ordinary government building. Perfect conditions for her experiment. Security guard James Martinez had greeted her warmly when she entered, checked her briefcase respectfully, and waved her through with a small nod. The way it should be. The digital sign scrolling behind him would have revealed her identity to anyone paying attention. But most people didn't look up. They never did. That was part of the test. When the clock ticked to 11:12, Naomi's attention flicked to her watch. 18 minutes until the mayor's arrival. She made a mental note about the building's accessibility signage before turning a page on her tablet. Then the front doors opened again. 2 police officers stepped in, their boots striking marble with force. One of them moved with the unmistakable swagger of someone used to not being questioned. Officer Brendan Walsh. Crew cut. Broad shoulders. Eyes already sweeping the room like he was hunting for the day's first problem. Naomi saw the moment his gaze landed on her. The tiny pause. The narrowing eyes. The quick assessment that was less about her behavior and more about her existence. Here it comes, she thought. This was exactly what she came to Riverside to observe. She just didn't know yet how far Officer Walsh would take it, or how spectacularly he would fail her test. Riverside City Hall on a late Tuesday morning looked exactly like the kind of place where nothing dramatic should ever happen. A young mother balanced a stroller while filling out permit forms. Two lawyers whispered over a stack of motions near the elevator. An elderly man sat quietly in a corner chair, rehearsing questions for the tax assessor. The air conditioning hummed. A phone rang somewhere upstairs. It was the kind of ordinary civic ecosystem that gives the illusion of calm competence. But under the surface, people knew certain patterns all too well. And one of those patterns had just walked through the front doors. Officer Brendan Walsh. Even before Naomi noticed him, other people in the lobby did. The security guard Martinez stiffened slightly. A clerk at the reception desk lowered her voice. A janitor pushing a mop cart turned his eyes to the floor. Walsh had a reputation. Not the kind that came from heroism or professionalism, but the kind whispered between staffers when supervisors weren't around. Doesn't de-escalate. Always angry. Has a problem with certain people. A training captain once joked darkly that Walsh skipped the day they taught constitutional rights. Others said he had a gift for smelling trouble, but by trouble, they meant anyone who looked poor, black, brown, or tired. Over 12 years, 17 citizens had filed complaints. None had stuck. Not for lack of evidence, but because Walsh had mastered the twin shields of arrogance and departmental protection. Today, he scanned the lobby with the same practiced contempt he carried everywhere. And then he saw Naomi, quiet, composed, a black woman alone on a bench with a leather briefcase and a tablet full of architectural plans. Suspicion locked onto her like a spotlight. Walsh adjusted his duty belt, squared his shoulders, and walked straight toward her with heavy, deliberate footsteps designed to send a message long before he spoke. He stopped directly in front of her, blocking her light. "Excuse me, ma'am." Not polite. Performed politeness. The kind used to establish dominance. Naomi looked up. "Yes, officer. What exactly are you doing here?" The mother at the permit counter faltered mid-sentence. The elderly man raised his head. The receptionist slowly reached for her phone, not to dial but to be ready. Everyone in the lobby knew this tension. This script. This type of officer. "I'm waiting for an appointment," Naomi said calmly. "What kind of appointment?" Walsh pressed, voice hardening. "That's between me and the person I'm meeting." Wrong answer for a man who expected obedience. Walsh took a step closer. "Ma'am, I'm asking a simple question. What business do you have in this building?" Naomi kept her voice level. "I'm a citizen in a public building. I have every right to be here." Morrison, the younger officer trailing behind Walsh, shifted uneasily. "Walsh, maybe she's just." "I said I've got this," Walsh snapped without looking at him. He turned back to Naomi. "Show me some ID. Am I being detained?" The crowd buzzed quietly at the word. It had weight now, the kind taught in community workshops and viral videos. Walsh's jaw flexed. "Don't get smart. Show your ID." "I will, if you tell me whether I'm being detained." To an officer like Walsh, a black woman asserting her rights was not a citizen, it was a threat. His voice rose. "Yeah, you're being detained for suspicious behavior." Phones came up. Not all at once, but enough. Walsh saw them but didn't care. Or believed, as he always had, that nothing they recorded would ever reach consequences. He pointed to her briefcase. "Open that. Now." I do not consent to a search. Walsh smirked, enjoying the impending clash. Your consent isn't required. He reached down, grabbed the briefcase, and began unzipping it with theatrical aggression. Documents spilled. State seals gleamed. A leather planner bounced onto the marble. The lobby went silent. This was no longer suspicion. This was the moment everyone knew. The situation was about to explode. Walsh didn't just unzip the briefcase, he dumped it upside down, letting papers cascade across the marble like he was shaking out a purse he suspected held stolen candy. Architectural plans rolled open. Budget documents slid across the floor. A leather planner stamped with Office of the Governor bounced against his boot. He didn't look at the titles. He didn't look at the seals. He didn't look at anything except Naomi's face, searching for fear. You steal these from somewhere? He asked, nudging a folder with the toe of his boot. No, Naomi said evenly. They are my work materials. Right, Walsh said. And I'm the president. Phones rose higher. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore, they were documenting. The young mother held her baby close with one arm while recording with the other. The elderly man stood up from his chair, alert, wary. Even the two lawyers had stopped whispering. Morrison hovered behind Walsh, pale and anxious. Walsh, maybe we should just. I said I've got this. Walsh barked, and Morrison fell silent. Again. When Naomi reached down to gather her papers, Walsh seized the opportunity to escalate. He grabbed her phone from the bench before she could touch it. Let's see who you're texting, he muttered. Give that back, Naomi said. Walsh squeezed it so hard the protective case cracked. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting. Stop resisting, he repeated, louder, for the cameras he thought he could control. Then he hurled her phone back into her briefcase. It struck the metal zipper with a sharp crack. The screen split like a spider web. Gasps rippled across the lobby. That's destruction of property, Naomi said quietly. Take it up with the complaint line, Walsh smirked. If you can read the form. That was when Martinez, the security guard, stepped forward. His voice trembled but held firm. Officer Walsh, sir, she's on the visitor log. She has a scheduled. Walsh whirled on him. Martinez, back off. This doesn't concern you. But sir, I can confirm. I said back. Off. Martinez froze. His hand hovered near the phone on his desk. Walsh grabbed Naomi by the elbow, hard. She winced. That's enough. You're coming with me. Disorderly conduct, trespassing, resisting. We'll sort it out downtown. You are detaining me without cause, Naomi said. Walsh yanked her fully to her feet. I am cause. And that was it, the moment the atmosphere snapped. Tension no longer hung in the air, it crashed. Phones pointed directly at Walsh now. Whispers spread like sparks. The young mother whispered, "This is going viral." In the background, Morrison nervously radioed dispatch. Unit 74, requesting backup at City Hall. Possible detainment. His voice cracked. Backup. For a woman sitting quietly with a tablet. Walsh pulled his handcuffs from his belt. The metallic clack of the hinge echoed through the lobby. It was the unmistakable sound of authority misused. Turn around, he ordered. Naomi didn't move. Officer Walsh, you are making a grave mistake. Oh yeah? Walsh sneered. And what are you going to do about it? He grabbed her wrist and twisted it behind her back. She inhaled sharply in pain. That was the final line for more than one person in the room. The elevator dinged. Out stepped Officer Timothy Rodriguez, 20-year veteran, well-respected, known for de-escalation, a man who still believed the badge meant responsibility. He saw Walsh twisting a woman's arm, saw documents on the floor stamped with government seals, and was already walking fast toward them. "What is going on here?" Rodriguez demanded. "Back off, Tim," Walsh snapped. "I'm arresting her." Rodriguez looked at Naomi, really looked. His eyes traveled from her face to the portrait on the wall behind her. A portrait showing a woman in a dark suit. Same posture. Same eyes. Same face. He inhaled sharply. "Walsh." "What?" "Walsh, stop." Walsh rolled his eyes. "Don't start." Rodriguez grabbed Naomi's dropped ID from the floor. He glanced at it. His face drained of color. "Oh my God." He stepped between them. "Let her go. Now." Walsh laughed in disbelief. "Are you serious?" Rodriguez turned, holding the ID high so the room could see. "This woman is Governor Naomi Pierce." Silence detonated across the lobby. No breathing. No movement. Only the soft whir of the AC. The young mother gasped. The elderly man whispered, "Good Lord." Martinez slumped against his desk in horror. Morrison's hands fell limp to his sides. Walsh stared at Rodriguez as if the words were in another language. "Governor, what?" Rodriguez spoke again, louder, clearer, for every camera recording. "She is the governor of Oregon." And with those 8 words, everything Officer Brendan Walsh thought he controlled collapsed in on itself. For a moment, City Hall stood frozen. The words Governor Naomi Pierce rippled through the lobby like a shockwave. Then everything unraveled at once. The mayor burst through the doors first, flushed and breathless. "Governor Pierce, what on earth?" She stopped cold when she saw the scattered papers, the cracked phone, and the marks on Naomi's wrist. Her face hardened. But before she could speak, the next set of doors swung open. 3 agents in dark jackets with FBI, Civil Rights Division strode in. Special Agent Victoria Carter led them, her voice sharp as steel. "Governor Pierce, we received an emergency referral. Are you safe?" "I'm fine," Naomi answered, steady as stone. Carter turned to Walsh. "Which officer detained the governor?" Walsh swallowed. "This is all a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Carter stepped closer. "Destroying property, unlawful detention, physical force, under Title 18, Section 242, that's deprivation of rights under color of law." She didn't wait for another excuse. "Agent Rivera. Detain him." The sound of federal handcuffs clamped around Walsh's wrists echoed through the marble lobby. The crowd gasped. Morrison backed up, shaking. "Please, I didn't mean, I just followed orders." Carter faced him. "You participated. You'll be detained pending your statement." That was it for Morrison. His voice cracked. "There's more. He's been doing this for years. Complaints, dozens, he told supervisors to bury them. I'll show you everything." Phones recorded every word. Naomi simply watched. Agent Carter turned back to her. "Governor, if you're willing, we can take a preliminary statement." Naomi nodded and stepped forward, facing Walsh. Cameras lifted. Silence fell. Her voice was clear. Respect should not require credentials. A few people clapped. Others murmured in agreement. The elderly man who had spoken up earlier nodded fiercely. The young mother wiped her eyes. Walsh's face twisted in panic. "Governor, please, I didn't know. If you had just told me." Naomi's gaze didn't waver. You shouldn't need a governor's title to treat someone with dignity. Every person you've ever spoken to the way you spoke to me deserved better. Walsh had no defense left. Outside, news vans screeched to a stop. The video of Walsh kicking the briefcase and grabbing Naomi's arm had already passed 2 million views. Comment sections exploded. National outlets sent push alerts. The scandal had gone from local misconduct to federal crisis in minutes. Agent Carter signaled her team. It was time. Walsh was escorted toward the door, hands cuffed, steps unsteady. Morrison followed, sobbing, telling the agents, "I'll testify. I'll give every file. I should have stopped him." Naomi gathered the last of her papers calmly, as if she were leaving a routine meeting. The mayor approached her, voice cracking. "Governor, I swear to you, this department will face full accountability." "Good," Naomi replied. "Because this isn't about me. It's about everyone who didn't have a title to protect them." The FBI agents guided Walsh outside. Blue and red lights washed across the lobby as the federal vehicle door opened. Walsh looked back at Naomi, eyes empty, shocked at how fast power can evaporate when truth enters the room. Naomi didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She simply watched him go. The door slammed. The lock clicked. Cameras flashed. Officer Brendan Walsh left City Hall not as the man who believed he owned the building, but as a federal suspect whose actions had finally caught up with him. And for the first time in years, Riverside felt the ground beginning to shift beneath its feet. The investigation into Officer Brendan Walsh began before the sun rose the next morning. The FBI Civil Rights Division moved quickly, seizing security footage, archived body cam files, complaint logs, and internal emails from Riverside PD. What they uncovered was not a single bad incident, it was a decade-long pattern. One by one, the buried stories resurfaced. There was Sharon Mitchell, a black mother on her way home from a late shift. Walsh claimed her taillight was broken, bodycam later showed it wasn't. He searched her car, dumped her belongings onto the street, joked that she smelled like trouble, and wrote 3 tickets. Her complaint had been marked unsubstantiated. Then came Marcus Taylor, the 17-year-old debate student. He drove his father's Mercedes to a tournament. Walsh made him sit on the curb for 40 minutes, calling him boy repeatedly. Marcus' mother had filed a detailed complaint. It vanished in administrative purgatory. There was Angela Ruiz, a Latina nurse. Walsh searched her car without consent, found nothing, but still issued citations. The body cam from that night had technical issues, until federal forensic techs recovered fragments. Patterns formed quickly, Black and Latino citizens stopped at triple the rate, far harsher treatment, and internal supervisors dismissing every complaint with copy-and-paste language. And the most damning element came from Officer Morrison, who flipped almost immediately. In his sworn deposition, voice-breaking, Morrison confessed. Walsh always said people like them needed reminders about their place. I laughed along. I thought that's how you survived in this department. I was wrong. I was a coward. He revealed racist text threads, internal jokes, discussion of teaching lessons, and even instructions from higher-ups to avoid excessive paperwork on minor complaints. Screenshots appeared on courtroom screens. Jurors leaned forward, horrified. 6 months after the incident, the trial began, one of the most watched civil rights cases in the country. Walsh entered the courtroom in a suit, looking thinner, eyes sunken. His lawyer argued that he made a reasonable mistake. That the governor's decision to enter without her security detail created confusion. That Walsh responded as any officer might. The prosecution tore that narrative apart within minutes. They played 8 angles of the City Hall incident, Walsh kicking the briefcase, grabbing Naomi's arm, refusing her ID, destroying her phone, escalating a peaceful interaction into a violent threat. They introduced body cam clips from prior stops, each revealing the same contempt, the same posture of dominance, the same racially charged tone. Then came Naomi. The courtroom went still as she took the stand. Calm. Controlled. Surgical. She recounted the morning step by step, the questions, the tone, the escalation, the moment Walsh decided she didn't belong. She spoke of her youth, being followed in stores, questioned in banks, treated as a threat in her own neighborhood. "I didn't enter City Hall as a governor," she said. "I entered as a black woman in America." And Officer Walsh reacted exactly the way too many officers react when they see someone like me. Walsh's lawyer tried to blame her for not announcing her title. Naomi replied, "No citizen should require a title to earn basic dignity. If I had been anyone else, I would not be here today. I would be another buried complaint." The jury received the case at 1:17 p.m. By 5:21 p.m., they were back. Guilty. On every count. Civil rights violation under color of law. Assault of a government official. False imprisonment. Unlawful search and seizure. Obstruction of justice. Walsh's face crumpled as the verdict echoed across the courtroom. 2 weeks later came sentencing. Judge Maria Rodriguez delivered her words slowly, each syllable sharpened by resolve. "Officer Walsh, you used your badge to intimidate, humiliate, and violate the rights of citizens who trusted you. Your record is not of mistakes, it is of patterns. And patterns have consequences." She delivered the ruling. 7 years in federal prison. 5 years supervised release. A permanent lifetime ban from all law enforcement roles in the United States. Walsh collapsed into his chair, hands trembling. Morrison, for cooperating fully, received 6 months in federal custody and a permanent ban from policing. But the final blow was institutional, not individual. Judge Rodriguez added, "This court orders the Riverside Police Department to undergo full structural reform under Department of Justice oversight. Federal monitors, mandatory body cams, civilian review boards, retraining for all officers, and transparency requirements. Effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Reporters ran for the doors. It wasn't just a conviction. It was the dismantling of a broken system. 1 year after Brendan Walsh was led out of City Hall in federal handcuffs, Riverside looked like a different city, almost unrecognizable from the place where dignity once depended on skin color, title, and luck. The Department of Justice consent decree had reshaped the entire police department from the ground up. Every officer was retrained under new civil rights protocols. Bias recognition, de-escalation tactics, and constitutional rights modules became mandatory, not optional. For the first time in the city's history, every patrol officer wore body cameras that could not be turned off, and civilians, teachers, pastors, activists, and ordinary parents, held seats on a newly empowered oversight board with real disciplinary authority. Complaints that once disappeared into filing cabinets were now investigated within strict federal timelines. Officers who previously acted with impunity were removed. New recruits, diverse, community-rooted, accountable, entered the force with values very different from the ones Walsh had lived by. And the numbers reflected the transformation. Excessive force incidents dropped 83%. Traffic stops in Black and Latino neighborhoods fell by half. Community trust surveys rose from 18% to 67% in just 12 months. Children no longer crossed the street when they saw a patrol car. Parents no longer warned teenagers to take alternate routes home. For the first time in years, Riverside residents felt their police department served them, not dominated them. Through it all, Governor Naomi Pierce became the quiet catalyst behind a national movement. Not because she had power, but because she refused to use it that day in City Hall. She became a symbol not of rank, but of resilience, proof that accountability begins when the people with authority choose to stand in the shoes of those without protection. She never capitalized on the fame. No book tours. No speaking circuits. No self-celebration. Instead, she traveled unannounced to departments across the state, meeting frontline officers, listening to community groups, and building policies rooted in lived experience, not political optics. At a press conference marking the one-year anniversary of the Riverside reforms, Naomi stood at the same marble steps where Walsh had once dragged her forward like a suspect. Now the lobby behind her was bright, busy, peaceful. Citizens walked freely without fear of being questioned for simply existing. She addressed the crowd with calm conviction. 1 year ago, she began, I sat on a bench in this building dressed like any other citizen. I watched how people with badges responded not to my position, but to my appearance. And what I discovered was painful, but necessary. She paused, letting the weight of that day settle. I didn't need anyone to know I was the governor. What I needed, what every person in this country needs, is a society where dignity is not conditional, where respect does not depend on a title, a job, or the color of your skin. Reporters leaned in. Cameras clicked. Citizens nodded, some holding back tears. Naomi continued, this isn't a story about a governor. It's a story about a system that finally faced its reflection, and a community brave enough to demand something better. She turned her message directly toward the people watching, both in front of her and across the country. Many of you know what it feels like to be judged before you speak. To be watched in stores. To be questioned in buildings where you have every right to be. To feel like you don't belong in places built with your tax dollars, your labor, your hope. Her tone softened. If that has ever been you, I want you to share your story. Because stories expose patterns, and patterns create change. She stepped back from the podium. And if you believe in confronting the darker corners of power, if you believe in truth, in accountability, in voices that won't be silenced, then stay with us. Follow Justice Unmasked. Because these stories aren't rare. They're just rarely told. The crowd erupted in applause, not for a governor, but for a truth finally spoken aloud. Riverside had changed. But America was still listening.